Okay, so this video is just going to cover the installation of the VCSA. I have a PowerPoint. Here we go. So, we're going to install the vCentre server on our ESXi host. There are 5 key parts. So I'm going to show you how to mount the image, run the installer. So how do you find the installer once you've mounted the image. We're going to go through in detail part 1 and part 2 of the installation. And then we're going to log into our VCSA. And as we go through, I'm going to talk about the potential issues we can have and how to solve each one. A lot of my mentees are having problems with this, so I thought it would be a great idea for a video for the future. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is mount the image in our domain controller. So I'm mounting mine in my DC01. And the way to do that is you go edit settings. You want to click on data store ISO file, navigate to the library data store. Once that opens up, you want to go net 701, and then it's called VCS Appliance. And that's the ISO file we want, so we will mount it. Make sure it's connected. Once you've mounted the ISO file, log into the domain controller. Once you're in the domain controller, you'll just see the desktop. You want to go into the File Explorer, double click on the CD drive, so that's the DVD drive. You want to click on VCSA UI Installer, Win32, and then Installer. And then we install. Alright. Sorry, it's a bit squished. My virtual machine behaves strangely. We're going to do the deploy appliance stage first, obviously. First page is just the legal jargon. We can forget about that. We want to keep it as an embedded system, so the top one. I'll show that a bit clearer. So the top option. Okay, so this is where it asks about the ESXi host information. Now this requires a fully qualified domain name, FQDN, and what this means is you must have the name of the machine plus the name of the domain. Now you made your domain when you install the DNS on your domain controller. So for example, my computer, the machine I'm installing it on, is called ESXi1, and my domain is called flatboxa.lab. We don't have to change the HTTPS port, and the username and password it requires are the credentials for your ESXi. So if you follow the conventions in our net 701, that will be username root and password will be password. And then next. I'll pause it while this works because it's going quite slow today. Okay, so now the installation is complete. We get a certificate warning and we can just accept that. If you do get an error at this point, it will say something along the lines of an SSL thumbprint. That can be due to 2 reasons. Firstly, if you have incorrect credentials, so for example, the username root and the password are incorrect, or if you've got a very laggy system. I found that also happens. So what I generally do if that happens is I simply re-put the username and re-put the password, and then I try again. And usually it works. Well, every time it's worked. So nothing needs to be changed. You just need to make sure that the username and password are correct, and then if it's a very laggy system, try again. I'll pause it while it validates. Alright, so on the next page we want to name the virtual machine we're creating. So we're installing the VCSA, and I'm going to call mine VCSA2 because it's my second one. Now we choose our root password, if you follow the Net 701 best practice, you know, although it's not best practice, my password is just password1. Nice and easy, and if they're all the same, you can never forget, right? The deployment and storage size we can keep default. I'm going to enable thin disk mode so that I'm not, you know, laying claim to all 250 gigabytes if I'm only ever going to use 21, you know. And then we click next. So on the next bit, we're going to go in the network settings of the machine we're creating. So this is the VCSA virtual machine. So VCSA2, which is the name of the machine, plus your domain. So this is a fully qualified domain name, FQDN, machine name, followed by domain name. You have to have both or it won't let you. Okay, now we get to pick an IP address. So I'm going to make mine .202, just because I'm absolutely certain that has not been taken yet. The subnet mask, default gateway, it makes you put one in. I just like to put in the IP address of my domain controller, and the DNS server is also the IP address of your domain controller, unless you have specifically set up a different DNS server, which is unlikely in the Net 701 labs. So the IP address of your domain controller will be fine. Now, we'll click continue and we'll see an error pop up. I'll pause it until the error pops up, and then I'll start recording again. Okay, so I've tried to click next, and we can find an error at the top. The fully qualified domain name is not found, and what that means, well, the screen is extremely laggy. What that means is we haven't set up a forward and reverse lookup for the VCSA. So to do that, we want to go into the DNS manager. To get to the DNS manager, you want to go into Server Manager, click on Tools, and then click on DNS. And then very slowly that will pop up. Man, it is horrifically slow, so I'll pause it again. Okay, so once that finally opens up, we can see in our main domain controller we have a forward and reverse lookup zone. Now we want to go into the forward lookup zone. We want to expand our domain name. So this is a handy way to find the name of your domain if you have forgotten. You can find it in this little DNS zone here. And we want to add a new host. Now, we want to add the name, we want to add our VCSA, right? So, you input the name of the machine, VCSA2, and then the IP address we wanted to give it. I think I wanted to give mine 202. And we can create an associated pointer record, but we'll do it manually just so you get an understanding of how. So we choose our name and our IP address. And as you can see, we can find the fully qualified domain name here of our VCSA. And then we click Add Host, and it's added. Once that's done, we want to go to the reverse lookup zone. So the way I like to think of it is the forward lookup zone attaches an IP address to a computer name. A reverse lookup zone attaches a computer name to an IP address. So it's just looking at the same thing from both sides. And to add it in the reverse lookup zone, we want to add a new pointer, add the IP address of the machine, and then add the host name. And here I'm going to add the fully qualified domain name. So vcsa2.mydomain flatboxa.lab. And then we OK. And we can see it here. vcsa2 flatboxa.lab, and this is its IP address. So now if we go back to the Server Appliance installer, which is frozen, I'll unfreeze it and then I'll come back. Okay, so it should be a lot quicker now. So if you get the FQN of the system name is not resolvable, the first place you want to check is the system name and IP address in this window. So you can see now that my domain is flatboxa.lab, but I have misspelt it. So by adding an A, the error will go away. If your system name and IP address are correct, the very next place you want to look is Server Manager, Tools, DNS, and then you want to look at your forward and reverse lookup names. Zones, sorry. Once you've checked them, and they line up right, that error will go away. So we can click Next. Because we've created our first forward and reverse lookup, our system name and IP address are correct, and we're good. This is just a review of what we've done, and then we can click Finish. Now it will install. There is a potential error that you'll get at the end of this, and it will say something along the lines of your CUID will not power on. And what this means is the ESXi host cannot power on the virtual machine, the VCSA. In order to fix that, you want to go into your vSphere. You want to look at the host. So my host is ESXi1. You want to then go Edit Settings, and then you want to open up the CPU settings. CPU at the top. Expand that, scroll down, and then there will be a hardware virtualization, and expose hardware assisted virtualization to the guest operating system. Ensure that this is checked, and then your CUID power on error will go away. So that's right here, this one here. And then back to our domain. This will install, generally takes a few minutes, so I'll pause it and I'll come back when that's completed and we can move on to step 2. Okay, so as you can see, the installation stage 1 has been completed, and we can proceed to the deployment stage, or the second stage. If you note at the bottom, we can see the management interface for the VCSA 2. So what we're going to do is we'll copy that URL into Notepad, because we'll be using that later to log into our VCSA. So we'll just keep that. And then we can continue. And it's back to going very, very slowly, so once again I'll pause it and I'll come back once it's moved on. Okay, so now we're moving on to stage 2 of the installation. This is when we set up our appliance that's now been created. So we'll retrieve the current settings. Okay, so the NTP server, this is our time, it's pretty much where our machines are going to get their time from, because they have to be have the same time in order to communicate properly. So to do that, I'm just going to put in the IP address of my domain controller, because my domain controller is my NTP server. I'm going to enable SSH. If it lets me, it's quite laggy. No, I'm not. Nah. Okay, so NTP server, domain controller IP, and then next. Cool, single sign-on domain name. So, I'm going to use administrator. Actually, sorry, I'm going to use my domain name, flatboxa.lab. And my single sign-on password is what you choose. Simply confirm the password, which means you have to have the same password twice. And then the site name. I'm just going to use flatboxa-site. And we can continue from there. And that'll get saved. The customer experience improvement program, don't worry about it. Our networks are not on the internet, so I don't think it's gonna work for them anyway. And we'll save the parameters. We'll get a look at the settings, just a review, and then we finish. Once it starts, you can't stop it. So set it up and then let it go. A potential error you can have is it will tell you that you've got an IP clash. Now what this means is that the IP address you have assigned to your VCSA has already been used, it's already been taken. And this can happen if you've attempted multiple installs. So for example, if in my first installation I used 172.23, actually I'll show you. So if my first installation I used .202, if this installation had failed but I had already passed the first stage, so if I had an error on the deployment stage, the second stage, then this password will have been used. This IP address has already been assigned, because at this point, after the first stage, the virtual machine has been created and has had that IP attached. So you can get an IP clash. Now, a way to fix that is simply to pick a different IP address or log into your ESXi through Internet Explorer, find the virtual machine, and then remove it. Actually, we'll keep this up because we'll be using this URL shortly. So this will do its thing. While this is working, I'll pause it and come back to you. Okay, so the appliance has been successfully set up. We can now close that. And we don't want to worry about this one. The first one it takes us to we can ignore. Now if you remember from earlier, we saved a URL. That's the URL we're going to go to. So we can just copy that into Internet Explorer, push enter, continue to this website, and now we can see our appliance management interface. So we can log in. I'm not 100% sure what the password is, or if I can type in pretty sure it's root. Interesting. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to go find out what the username should be. Okay, so the username was root, and then your password, I was just spelling the password wrong. So, once we've logged in, this is what we'll see. And this is our VCSA. VCSA2.flatboxa.lab. Once we're in here, you can start completing all of the labs, working through it. One potential issue I've heard about is with your domain controller shutting down prematurely, just closing itself off. And a fix to that is to go into your command prompt and type in this line here. So I'll show you. The reason this happens is if you're using an expired version of the evaluation. So when I first installed it, I used the evaluation ISO file, and apparently that has expired, and that's why these turn off. So once adding this into my domain controller, I'll just type it out, slmgr.vbs rearm. And once that's done, you will have, it'll be different for you. This will show up differently. It will say you'll have to restart to complete the changes. So I've already run it, so it won't run again for me. Once you've done that, you'll be fine, and then it should stop. That's all I have for this video. Just installing the vCentre Server Appliance and logging in. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.